Welcome to this Chamber Low Carbon Live Lunch and Learn event. My name is Stephen Sykes and I manage the Chamber Low Carbon programme and your host for today's session. For those unfamiliar with the programme, Chamber Low Carbon is brought to you by East Lancashire Chamber of Commerce in partnership with North and Western Lancashire Chamber of Commerce, Business Wise Solution and Boost, supporting businesses across Lancashire to go green, save money and reduce their carbon footprint. Part funded by the European Union, European Regional Development Fund, this £6 million programme provides a suite of free services to help businesses improve their energy and environmental efficiencies, introduce on-site renewable energy generation, and by doing so, save money. The programme also helps Lancashire businesses that are developing new low-carbon technologies to bring their products to market, facilitate them being manufactured in Lancashire, and help them find demonstrator sites within Lancashire. Today's live lunch and learn is a break with our traditional format and will take the form of an interview with our special guest, Tony Garner, Managing Director of Viva PR, an award-winning Northwest communications agency. On Tony's LinkedIn profile, it states, storytelling with impact. Tony was a reporter with the Lancashire Evening Telegraph for 14 years, before establishing Viva PR in 2002. 8 years ago, he was seconded by BEA Systems to head up their external media team and still counts them today as a client. One thing LinkedIn doesn't tell you about Tony is that he was England World Cup winning captain Bobby Moore's ghostwriter for a Sunday paper during Italia 90. Welcome, Tony. And if I can first kick off with the Q&A session. What are the challenges, particularly for businesses trying to gain traditional media attention?
I think particularly in sectors around engineering and low carbon energy and the like, Stephen, one of the things that businesses and business owners in particular, and I know this, is we get obsessed by our own worlds and our own inventions and so on, and expect the world to understand or be excited about what we're doing. And within that, we sometimes lose the clarity of the message that we're trying to get across. What you've got to try and do is make complex ideas accessible and eye-catching and express them concisely and simply so that somebody who's either time poor or constantly bombarded with story ideas instantly gets an understanding of why they should read on. You've got to get to that hook really quickly. And it offends some people's sensibilities to kind of take their life's work and try and distill it into that little soundbite, but it's what you're up against. I have a friend who he's now in the PR world, but a few years ago he was the business editor at the Manchester Evening News, and I popped across to see him and have a brew and pick his brain really on behalf of our clients. And I was asking him precisely these questions about, how do we grab your attention, Simon? And he said, Tony, come here. And he grabbed this sack of mail that he'd had that week and emptied it out on his desk. And I'm not kidding you, there's a mountain of letters and faxes and all sorts of stuff. And he said, that's like 1 week's, just stuff that comes. And that's not counting the emails. And, it's got to be really good to grab my attention because I just haven't got the bandwidth. And I've only got 4 pages or 6 pages a day to fill. So, I've got to filter out a lot of nonsense. Yeah, and the other thing to bear in mind is the classic Einstein rule of if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, then you don't understand it yourself. Well, you have to treat the media like they're a 6-year-old. My big issues are when we're dealing with our clients is that there's sometimes a reluctance from within to play that game. They're reluctant to actually boil things down in real simple terms. But you have to do that. You have to get rid of jargon, and you really have to get to the point really quickly, and make sure that you answer those really basic 5 W's questions: the who, what, where, why, when, and how. Really get that's the nub of it. The other thing that is a challenge when you're making claims in this kind of green space, in particular, what we're talking about, is that you have to have that third-party credibility. Credibility is crucial here. There's a lot of claims being pushed out into the media every day. It can't just be you saying you've come up with this brilliant thing that's going to change the world. You've got to have some evidence that will back that up, and it can't be your mum or your best mate that says this is really good, I've tried it. It's got to be somebody credible, third-party wise, that is backing up your claim. So make sure you get those kind of third-party endorsements lined up before you go public, because you only get that one chance to make an impression. That's your classic, you know. And so going in there unprepared, you know, and as soon as you'll get some questions. If you get somebody's interest, they'll have questions for you, and they're not trying to trip you up, but they're trying to establish, is this guy for real, or, you know, that they really have something here. So you've got to get that right. The other classic kind of challenge is it's really hard, but really this last 12 months during COVID has been brought to the fore, is make sure you target the right person. You know, years ago now, when I was on the Lancashire Telegraph, we used to get lots of PRs badgering us with stories that they didn't know the difference between Yorkshire and Lancashire. And that, you know, that's a cardinal sin, isn't it? You know, but they were pitching stories north of London, just like that. You know, you've really got to understand the whether it's a newspaper or a magazine or the BBC or whatever. You've got to understand whether your story is suitable for that either outlet or that person. You know, even for us, where we've got this huge database, getting to that right person and making sure that, you know, you targeted, it takes a bit of research and a bit of time, but it's better to be surgical with this than just do a blitz out to as many names as possible, because the real kind of the real kind of in that an agency like ours has got over an individual company, I think, is that we've got established relationships. But there's no secret to getting those established relationships. It's just a question of time and giving people what they want, understanding what they want and giving them what they want. So build relationships with the right people. That's what I'd say.
Okay. In your opinion, what are the classic pitfalls that people make when they're pitching a story to the media?
I think one of the first is that they forget the medium that they're pitching to. So we'll have clients who'll say to us, get us on the TV with this one. And we'll say, yeah, but where are the pictures? You know, what's the visual story here that we're trying to say? And they kind of shrug, what are you talking about? It's still a great story. And we say, yeah, it is a great story, but it's just a lot of numbers, or it's, you know, we've got to be able to tell this story visually, and we've got to pitch that as well as the story, because that's, you know, that's what that medium is interested in. How are we, you know, are we going to be able to give somebody a walk through a factory? Are we going to be able to put a talking head up who'll be able to explain it pithily in 30-second soundbite style? Ditto radio. What does this story sound like in you know, for a radio? And even when you're looking at more traditional media or online publications, it's not just about firing out a press release and forgetting it. It's about what pictures have we got, what graphics, do we have some short video that will bring it alive? Because most publications these days have an online page. So it's remember the medium that you're pitching to. And classically, people don't give enough notice. So you talk to radio and TV producers, and they get really frustrated by people in our industry not giving them advance notice so that they can plan and schedule things in. So a week's notice is okay. You know, a lot of these things are not time sensitive, and it's up, you know, you can say when it's going to be news, so you can get all your ducks in a row, if you will, and you can choose which is going to be the best medium or best, you know, area that you want to pitch this to. The other thing that it's a classic, and it's a business classic, not just a media relations one, but people will overpromise and try to say this is the world's fastest shortage, you know, whatever, when they don't have that they can't really back up that claim, or that they're really over exaggerating a claim, which is only going to do one thing: it's going to get somebody's back up, and you're going to lose any kind of relationship opportunity or credibility that you have. And even if you get through all that and manage to get, you know, on TV or radio and make outrageous claims that you can no longer, you can't back up in the long run, that's going to backfire on you anyway. So reputational, long-term reputational damage to do to that is bad. I've mentioned about doing your homework and understanding the publication. I think that's another classic, you know. Lancashire is not in Yorkshire. I'd describe that one. But I think the biggest cardinal sin for that we see a lot is that people don't get to the point quickly enough. So they'll do a 400, 500 word build-up, expecting somebody to read through this. When we go back to the kind of Simon at the MEN idea of mounting off stuff, you are just a little kind of straw in that haystack. So get to the point really quickly. And finally, I would say a mistake would be to target the title and not the individual writer or journalist. Target the individual journalist at a publication and go that deep.
Okay, good stuff. Greenwashing or rainbow washing, with respect to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, are terms that are bandied about. What do they mean, and how do you avoid them?
Well, greenwashing is, in one sense, it's a bit of a positive, because it's a kind of it's a term that's come about thanks to an awareness of the harm that we're doing to the planet. It was coined by an environmental campaigner, a guy called Jay Westervelt, and it describes the law of unintended consequences of people making false claims to kind of shine up the environmental planet-saving credentials of the organisation or the car or whatever it is. So a lot of firms, Westervelt suggested, were making false or misleading claims about their eco-credentials and came up with this term, greenwashing. It's now a label that's stuck, and there are bodies that do a top 20 list every year of the worst offenders. It's not a top 20 that you want to get on if you value your reputation. But I think that what it now points to is that the media and a lot of environmental pressure groups are now looking at claims that are made quite deeply, and you know, you've got to be really careful that you don't fall into the trap inadvertently. So it is about being able to back up the claims that you make, have that third-party evidence, don't over-exaggerate, don't make vague eco statements. So you know, there's examples like a milk substitute that claims to be substantially sustainably sourced, but there's no further evidence given, or high street fashion retailers saying that the clothes are made from recycled cotton, but without actually saying what percentage of recycled cotton, and that kind of, you know, vagueness that creeps in. And then there are companies that create their own eco brand labels that have absolutely no accreditation or organisation to them. It's just the marketing department's come up with it because, you know, it will sell more to discerning members of the public or other businesses. And then there's those sins of omission where the product's pollution levels don't actually appear in any of the information. And it's bad practice, obviously, it's bad business practice, but from a PR and comms perspective, it's dangerous because, you know, they ultimately risk damaging your brand's reputation, and that's not, you know, that's got to be a no-no. And they mean that the media is going to be more sceptical about any claims that you're making in the future. So even if you then go on to create something that was world-beating, you've damaged your claim already.
So the government has brought out some guidelines for helping companies to make their green claims and eco-labeling, and I think a lot of the topics that you just picked up there are brought out in the guidance. Just moving us on. As mentioned earlier, you were a reporter yourself. Do journalists look at every pitch that they receive? And what makes a journalist more likely to open one pitch rather than another?
Well, as I said, no is a short answer because of the volume that they're dealing with. So, you know, email's the most typical way still of people getting in touch, although, you know, the other social media channels sometimes helpful as well. But the same rules apply. The headline, the email subject line is crucial. You've got that 4 or 5 word bit of real estate there to show why your story is topical or deserves time to read on, and why it's relevant to them. And it's a hard call, you know. It's worth the time to devote really thinking. You know, normally when we're writing emails, the subject line is probably the last thing that we think of and the thing that we spend the least amount of time doing. And actually, in this respect, what I'm saying is this is the crucial bit. This is where you spend most of your time. What you say in paragraph 15, nobody cares if you don't get past subject line. So keep it short, don't make it salesy, make it timely, avoid words like free, because that gets stuck in spam filters. And the other thing is, if you've built up that rapport and relationship, then you probably don't have to try as hard, because they know if it's come from a trusted source, it's probably worth reading.
Okay. What would you say was the best time to pitch your message or your story?
Well, throughout the week, mornings, most publications and broadcast organisations will have a morning meeting. The exact timing varies, but that's your best time. And I would say forget Mondays and Friday afternoons. Well, forget Fridays and weekends. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday mornings is your best time. Caveat to that is rules are there to be broken. So you know, sometimes you can go against all that kind of good practice to make a point, to stand out from the crowd, or you might find a good reason for getting that. And the world's changed a little bit over the last 12 months, thanks to COVID. So people are working in far stranger times and so on. So But traditionally, I think our advice to clients, we had one just last week where a release had been doing the rounds all week, bouncing between the different departments for sign off. And it finally got signed off Thursday afternoon. So, right, get it out there tomorrow. And we said, no, we'll wait. If you don't mind, we'll wait till next week because we can. And because if we send it out Friday, it won't go anywhere. So they took our advice. They don't always, but they took our advice on that occasion.
Yes, they pay the money and they take their chances. I think we've touched on this already to some extent, but how can you make sure that your story stands out amongst the others?
We have an ex-colleague called Sarah, and she used to call it that drop your chips factor. You've got to have that drop your chips factor. That's what we're looking out for. So something that makes you stop and think, something that really kind of is new or different. When I was seconded to BAE, we had a lot of challenges getting things out to the media. Not least because, we once did an audit around the different stakeholders that we had to speak to every time we wanted to put something out to the media, and that included right through to the legal department there. And it was something like 20 different layers that we had to get through. Obviously, when you're dealing with, in those situations, quite often you're dealing with like multi-million-pound contracts at quite senior levels, then it was important to do that, and it was important that it was done with, there was a certain amount of scrutiny. But you didn't really have to sweat over whether anyone was going to pick that up because of the nature of what we were dealing with. But it did create a bit of inertia around more general stories when we were trying to get reach. And I remember sitting there one day with a colleague, Adam, and Adam and I came up with a story that would allow us a little bit more freedom and flexibility, that we would not quite as constrained. We came up with this idea of the fighter jet of the future, and we spoke to one of our in-house futurologists, which is a great job description, and I didn't even know they existed, but we spoke to this lad called Nick Colosimo, and he came up with 4 different amazing fighter jets of the future ideas, concepts. We were like thinking 20, 30, 40 years hence. And after speaking to Nick, we then sat down with the designer and got them to turn it into like pretty pictures. And then we started to flesh out what that story might actually look like. So then we got the corporate team excited, and they invested a few quid on creating animations from these pictures. And then we got some video of Nick, our futurologist, talking about the story and how, the different elements of it, the detail of it. And so this process that had started with Adam and I just kicking a few ideas around with the brew had got legs, and we realised that it really had some serious potential to get some like media pickup if we started playing this right. So we pulled a media plan together of where we would like it to go. We spoke to the people within the business now. We then got our stakeholder buy-in to make sure that we were kind of not wasting our time on this, but really kind of making sure that it told the story that the business wanted to, about the kind of innovation story and the great thinking that goes on. And then we finally, when everything was ready to go, we sat on it for a few more weeks because it was a Farnborough year, and we decided the best time to put a story like this out would be at the just ahead of the Farnborough Air Show. So we spoke to a contact at the Sunday Times and offered it them exclusively. And on the day of Farnborough show, or the day before Farnborough, that was a double page spread in the Sunday Times. And then we released it to the world 24 hours later to mark the start of Farnborough that year. And we got pick up globally. It was a great, successful story, but it had all the kind of key elements. It had that drop your chips factor, and it had all the elements that you go to make it a really good story. You know, I think in the end, something like 250 plus media outlets across the world picked it up. All the major broadcasters, it made the BBC News. It was great, and then everyone else claimed credit for it,
as they do. Again, drawing on your experience, and you've touched on this before. How important is this to have a relationship with the reporter?
I genuinely think, you know, if there's one thing that people take away from this, it's that this bit is crucial. You know, today as an agency, we whenever we get a new recruit in, we encourage them to make contact and make rapport and get a rapport going with the journalists that they're going to need regular contact with. We do a lot of work in different sectors. So education sector, for example, we encourage anybody working in that area for us to get in touch with all the education correspondents in the local region that they'll need to contact with, but also to introduce themselves to the BBC and Sky, where we've got good relationships because of the work we do. But I'd even flip that question the other way around, because when I was a journalist, my number one tool was my contacts book. You know, if I ever lost that, you know, this was back in the day when it was literally a book and you wrote it in it with a pencil or a pen. But you know, that was kind of like the thing that you spent years building up, and you built relationships with people, that sources that you could trust and turn to. You know, my role for a number of years as a sports reporter was to fill 2 or 3 blank pages every day, and you know, sometimes that meant manufacturing things by speaking to our sources, and you know, being able to pick the phone up, have a few conversations with people you knew and trusted, was a really good way of doing it. So even though today we've got a database which makes it really easy within like a few minutes to pull together a list of the most up-to-date titles and contacts within that, and then fire an email off, and you can check who's opened it and so on. I think that just leaving it at that is kind of lazy and leaves you open to making all the mistakes that we discussed earlier, because your job's not done at that point. So having the relationships is kind of crucial, and you don't need any special superpower to do that. That's the other message I'd say here. You just need to be able to use a phone, pick the phone up, speak to someone, introduce yourself, say, I work for so and so. We've got this brilliant bit of eco wind turbine, solar, whatever it is. And I'm going to be dealing with you know, media. I'll need to understand how you operate. What's your deadlines? When do I, you know, just ask them some basic questions about how you can help them in the future. Don't have to be selling anything in. Just get it, you know, get that, have that virtual brew. Talk a bit of football, or you know, whatever it is. Find some common ground, so that when you do have something to say, you've actually got a real person that you can have a real conversation with.
I was going to say, and the number of people these days who are terrified of picking the phone up.
Yeah. No, it's
possibly a skill that's being lost.
Yeah, I think it might be a bit of a generational thing. it's partly a result of we do have all these other kind of channels of communication, and if they work for you and you can build rapport and relationships on those, that's absolutely fine too. Going back to the Simon story and the massive thing, getting through to somebody on the phone, it ain't always easy. And it might be that you're having those email conversations and you're building up a rapport that way, and that might be in the first instance, and then you get to really break the ice and have a telephone conversation, or God willing, later this year you might do a media tour and introduce yourself in person.
We live in hope for that one. Segueing nicely though, and possibly showing my age to some extent. Social media, why would you bother?
Well, what we've been talking about is earned media with the press, and that's got real value because it's got that kind of third-party endorsement value. It's not just you saying that you're really good. It's the Times or the Daily Tell or the BBC saying you're really good, which is has more clout. Social media is what we describe as owned media, but so you get to be your own publisher and you get to get your story directly out to key audiences, and that's vital too these days and really useful. So we do a lot of work for our clients these days on LinkedIn, where we are we take over the profiles of directors and business development people and so on, and create our content much as we would have done traditionally for a media release. But we can be far more tailored and look at the problems that our piece of kit or our organisation is going to solve for other people. And we can take it a step further because we actually create the connections on their behalf as well. So we might be looking in the business to business field and at a product or service that goes into a particular sector. I'll say breweries, for example. That's just a hobby of mine. And we can look at all the key people in the different breweries in the country and start making connections on behalf of our client and create content that they'll be interested in. And it's a good way of telling your story, and you have that control. It's an area where you've got to consider as well as part of your mix of getting your communications in order.
Okay, and continuing in with that theme, in your opinion, which channels would you use?
I think that really depends on what you're trying to achieve with your comms. So lead generation or attracting the right people, or it depends on the goal that you're after. So if it's lead generation in your business to business, LinkedIn's a bit of a no-brainer for you, I would say. If it's business to consumer and you're trying to build an army of supporters, or trying to attract the best talent to come and work in your facility, offices, factory, whatever, Facebook might be a better bet. So horses for courses is the answer. I think we tend to stick to what classically called the big four, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But there are hundreds, and TikTok, and all the other. It depends where your audience is. So you've got to consider that as not what you particularly want to do, but what you want to do. And the other thing to consider these days is the use of influencers. and this is, there are various tribes out there, but you know, there are uses now for real people who have real followings to help amplify and spread your message effectively. We've done for a bit of this kind of work recently, and for example, we did the opening of a kind of trampoline bouncy castle centre, and we got a load of mums who are and dads who are influencers, who have blog sites that have plenty of followers, to come down and experience the place ahead of its opening for free, to share on their channels and spread the word far more effectively than, you know, 10, 15 years ago would have been like knocking on the door of the regional paper and trying to get them to do something. I think they ended up doing both, but I think the more effective route is using influencers.
Okay, and you'll be pleased to know this is the last question from me. Sticking with social media, what kind of content should companies post?
I think, you know, there's the gut feeling is to avoid the kind of personal stuff, you know, what you had for tea last night, unless it's got some kind of driving point. You know, it'll take you on to somewhere new. So I'm quite happy about sharing insider gossip from within our business, but I wouldn't kind of start then talking about what I was doing at home. And I'd concentrate on solving people's issues, coming up with content that delivers value to your audience. Try and come up with evergreen content, and by that I mean things that can be presented in lots of different formats. So that can be a guide where you can break it down into little snippets, or it could be a white paper where you're looking at, you know, you and your technical bodies are breaking down and creating almost a how-to guide, but you could almost then strip that white paper down into its constituent bits and, you know, use a bit of it as a tweet. We have an expression of create once, use many. You know, it's perfect recycling. So those kinds of ideas, you know, for example, preparing for today's webinar, I've created a lot of content here that I'm not just going to forget after today. There's going to be a blog come out of this, or several. There's going to be, you know, some little column that we'll send off to the business paper. All sorts of things that, you know, we've spent some time preparing for this. We may as well use it to its maximum. So, but you get it first, obviously. But,
Bargain.
Yes.
Thanks, Tony, and I hope that's answered some of our audience's questions, but no doubt it could have triggered others. If it has triggered some more questions, please get in touch with the Chamber Low Carbon Programme and we can forward details on to Tony, or if I now share my screen again with the wonders of technology, you'll see Tony's contact details there. So it's just really now with me to actually just thank Tony for his time, expertise and insights today, and also to thank you for your attendance. We hope you found it of interest and it's given you some food for thought. Our next Lunch and Learn will be What is Carbon Net Zero and Why You Should Care, presented by Peter Catlow, Director of Sustainability at Business Wise Solutions, on Thursday, the 4th of March. To find out more about Chamber Low Carbon Programme and the support available if you're a Lancashire-based business, or to register for our newsletter or future events, or indeed to look at some of our past lunch and learns, please go to the Chamber Low Carbon website for more details and to register. Please keep in touch via the media channels on your screen. And until we see you again, on behalf of Tony, Viva PR, the Chamber Low Carbon team and myself, goodbye and stay safe.